Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of Community Conversations. And today we have with us Maxim Poulsen with over 26K followers on LinkedIn. Maxim talks about all things growth, automation, and marketing. And he calls himself a bit of an automation nerd, which I absolutely am a fan of because his content speaks for himself. Interestingly enough, Maxim also he's the host of his own podcast show, which is called Growth Talks. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a must watch because he has a lot of fun rules that he puts into it, which make it a really fun watch, and along with some amazing guests as well, obviously. So thank you so much for being here, Maxim. It means a lot.
Of course, really appreciate the invitation, and I hope what I have to share is gonna be helpful for the community.
Absolutely. No, following you, I already know it's going to be, but we leave that for the questions. But it's a pleasure to have you. So quick one, Maxime. The concept of the show is 10-15 minutes, 5 quick questions, and we want to dive straight into your expertise if you're ready.
Let's go.
Let's go. My first question, a big one. Why LinkedIn? Why have you chosen LinkedIn as a platform for sharing the content that you create? Because there are many reasons that people do it. Is it personal branding? Is it for your company branding? Is it lead gen? Can be multiple as well, but I just wanted to know your personal perspective on it.
So I guess two quick answers to this. First is why LinkedIn as a platform, and then sort of why actually start posting on LinkedIn. So I guess, obviously, I'm too young for Facebook. I think Twitter is a little bit too aggressive. It's the short form isn't really what I'm looking for to like develop ideas. And I feel like LinkedIn was, well, obviously, it's a professional network. So I already had a lot of people that I knew there. And I also think that just the type of content that I produce fits particularly well to LinkedIn. So it did seem to be the obvious choice. Then, why start posting? It was a little over a year ago. Honestly, I started for two main reasons. The first one being, if I do this every day for a year, like where is it going to bring me? And I would never have expected, to be invited to a show like this. So that's a cool part. And the second part is, I'm more of a tech guy. I like coding, I like automation, I like tracking, analytics, and stuff like that. And I'm a terrible writer, to not swear. And so the goal of writing was, well, to learn how to write. And the idea was, if I keep writing every day, maybe I'll improve my capacity to explain myself to others. And I was thinking that would only have a positive effect on myself and on my career.
Absolutely, that is so well answered, especially because the thing that you said, each platform sort of has their audience and their nicks and knacks, and so that's why it's amazing that you picked LinkedIn. And I believe the other part that you've mentioned is consistency, and that's so great. That is always an answer, so that's really good to know. But I wanted to kind of know, that kind of circles me into my next question, which is, I've been following your content, and so what is your content creation process? Especially how do you filter what do you want to write about or talk about? Because your content, it's a great mix of resources, of entertaining content, especially the ones like I've seen Ikigai as well, Ikigai, resources, carousel. So it's really interesting. And so I just wanted to know, what's your thought process of when you're creating content, and then how do you filter the right topic to talk about?
Yeah. So I think I have a bit of a different approach to a lot of what you're going to see on LinkedIn, in the sense that, so I have a full-time job and I do like freelancing and I have services on the side. But LinkedIn I don't do it for the money. I do it for the writing and for the sharing. And so I don't really have an ulterior motive in everything I post, which means that I'm lucky to have extreme flexibility on the topics that I post about. So you talked about stuff like Ikigai or quotes or videos, and that's generally going to be like weekend stuff. It's like Saturday, Sunday. Maybe you don't want to read like a 25-page guide on product qualified leads, so I'll share a carousel or an image that I liked or a picture that I took. So that's weekend is relaxed stuff I like, no stress. Then during the week, I think the heuristic I try to stick to is I write content for my younger self. I write stuff that I would have liked to read 6 months ago, a year ago. And so most of the time, the way that this sort of materializes itself is I need to learn something. So I read a ton of articles, I read a ton of posts, like newsletters, stuff like that. And then to make sure that I really understand the concept, I'm going to take all of that material and turn it into a carousel, turn it into a text post, turn it into a diagram, something like that, to really, cement it in my brain and then share it to others in a format that I would have found useful. So that's like weekdays, weekends. And then if you want a little bit more detail, a lot of it's repurposing, a lot of it is inspired by other creators, a lot of it is stuff that I'm currently working on, a lot of it is my LinkedIn experience, a lot of it is personal stories and stuff like that. Then we sort of get into more day-to-day choices.
Right. And maybe that's why, like, it's actually right, because I mentioned, like, sometimes, like you mentioned, it's a picture, or sometimes it's just, it doesn't necessarily have to be educative or about SaaS or tech. It's about other things as well. And maybe that's what is sort of needed on LinkedIn. Sometimes it is a breath of fresh air,
Yeah.
based on like what people post sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, I think
Right.
a phenomenal example of this would be like Jake Ward or Matt Barker, who both post very little pictures of themselves. But,
Right.
When you think about the fact that like the people that are engaging and commenting on my stuff every day, like, they've become friends. So, I want to share my trip. I want to share my experience. I want to share a story because, it also has to have this very personal part, even if the goal of 90% of my content is to be educational, useful, or inspirational.
And that's awesome, because I feel like that does help you, bridge that gap of connection, especially now when people are, your audience, and they, like you mentioned, they become your friends, and that's really cool. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, so like, what is, this is a key one, because I know a lot of people would want to know this as well. Like, what's your most important lesson that you think that you've learned, over your own content creation journey, reaching up to this level of up to, 26,000 followers, which is a great milestone as well.
That's a good one, because only picking one is always hard. I think
It is.
something that I've realized, and especially recently, is it only gets easier. And when you get started, it's super hard because you don't get many likes, you have no clue what to talk about, your content is trash. And the thing is, no, but it's true. And it's really like, I mean, we hear so much about consistency, but the fact it's not the consistency itself, it's the discipline to be consistent throughout the hard times. It's
Right.
You see what I mean? It's not necessarily showing up every day. It's showing up when the day before you did a post that did like 500 views. And that's hard, because you're like, I'm not going anywhere, I'm going backwards. But what you also have to understand is, even me today, I think I do like between 20 and 30K views on average per day. And I still have posts that do 2K. I still have posts that do like 25 likes, and it happens, but yeah, so it gets easier because, as you have people who follow you, you sort of create this community, you feel less alone. And then you also have a lot of older content that you can work on, that you can improve, repurpose. The more you write, the more ideas are going to come. And so it's really a process where over time, it really starts being like integrated into your life, and everything comes easier. You have more engagement, you know how to comment better, you have more ideas that come, you know how to write better and faster. So it's not easy to get to the point where, and you also grow faster and faster. It took me like 8 months to go from 5K to 12K, and it took me 4 months to go from 12K to 26K. So yeah, it's stick through those bad posts, stick through those rubbish ideas that no one likes, because at some point, it's gonna stick.
That's so amazing. And I kind of like, I will circle back to that in my last question, because again, like, I feel like you sort of already answered that, which is, I was about to ask, what's the best advice, but I feel personally, I've already got it. And thank you for the brutal honesty as well, where you mentioned, sometimes you get like very little views and impressions, and sometimes you get the ones that you're creating content for, right?
Yeah.
But
For
yeah,
sure.
that's definitely the one. I feel like that advice has definitely come through. But here's another interesting one, because especially, like with the intro I mentioned, you're into automation. So I kind of wanted to know your take on how do you think the introduction of AI is changing the content creation landscape. ChatGPT being definitely one of the bigger ones. But what is your take on AI coming into the content creation part? Some people are like, is it going to eat up my job, or how do you filter out if it's ChatGPT generated? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so specifically when it comes to like LinkedIn content or just in general?
I would like to say LinkedIn, and if we're going to
Okay.
keep it a little LinkedIn oriented,
Yeah,
so
yeah, of
definitely
course, of course, of course. I mean, honestly, I'm maybe not the best person to ask about this because I don't use AI at all in my content,
over.
like
Right.
not literally nothing. If it isn't to like talk about AI news or AI, I don't know. I do less than one post about AI per month. So I don't use it and I don't really talk about it because it's just not my topic of expertise. It's just not towards not what I go towards. Sorry.
Right.
So then when it comes to content creation, I think of course AI has made like incredible like leaps and bounds recently, and GPT-4 is incredibly powerful, but something that AI is gonna be that we're gonna find missing in AI at least for the next months, maybe years, is its capacity to replicate someone's personality. And what's something that I find an exercise that's quite interesting that can be done in both ways. It's every day I have maybe 10, 15 creators where I read their posts and I comment on them. And I'm pretty sure that if I didn't have their name and their picture on the top of the post,
Right.
or that their carousels were the same, but like without their pictures on it, I would still know it's theirs because I recognize the way that they write. I recognize what they talk about. I recognize all of this. And this is something that you can't replicate today with AI. A Jason Vanna post, a Jake Ward post, like all of these you can, or, okay, without trying to be too egocentric, but my carousels, the bright blue, like you recognize them, the bright blue with the green, and that's something that you just can't replicate with AI today. So using AI to write a first draft or to look for ideas or to reword sentences or to make it shorter or more formal, or sure, but there's no, I can't imagine a successful person on LinkedIn copying text out of ChatGPT and into LinkedIn and it being remarkable,
Right. Okay. That
So
makes
yeah,
sense.
early in the process, sure, but there has to be at least some editing, some writing, like between the moment where AI spits it out and it goes onto your LinkedIn.
I couldn't agree more, especially because you mentioned like your AI may not be your area of expertise, but I do definitely agree with that because that we actually did interview Jason Vanna as well, and that entire personification, sassy Jason, it just stands out. You can't sort
Yeah,
of get AI to do that for yourself, and like what you mentioned,
exactly.
just that brand recall.
Yeah,
So absolutely, that was so well answered, and I just wanted to know. Okay,
appreciate
so
it.
I already got that one bit where that you mentioned about it's already sort of an advice, but I know this is something that's going to be helpful to our community members, which is somebody starting off from zero. What would be your most basic advice to them, which is something
Yeah,
that you've already given, but if you want to build up on that a little bit.
yeah. So I'd say, and this is something that Jason and I like to talk about. I interviewed him a bit ago, and but also in the comments, and it's something that you hear a lot. So I have a theory. It's a conspiracy theory that you're gonna see. I have a conspiracy theory that LinkedIn ghostwriters
Right.
love to give the tip of just start posting without any plan, so
Right.
that people start, fail, and then go and see ghostwriters to pay for their service.
I think I may have like come across one of those posts like that, where I think I saw yours,
That's
Jason.
it's my LinkedIn conspiracy theory.
I think
Swear.
I think you've, I think you've got a
No,
follower
but
on that bit.
without like joking aside, it does make sense, like
Right.
people start and then you do a few posts and it's like, oh, what am I gonna speak about? And so, oh, I'm gonna go see a ghostwriter. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like SEO people who say SEO is dead for it to have less competition. But anyway, so that the actual tip is before, and I have a lot of friends who are in the process of starting to post, and I'm like, before starting, write 15 posts. Give yourself a bit of leeway, because when you start, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that it gets easier and easier, but when you start, you don't know what you're going to talk about, you don't know what people are going to like, you don't know, like, it's going to take you forever to write. So give yourself a bit of leeway by thinking, what are my main topics going to be? What is my tone going to look like? Am I going to use many emojis, or am I going to not? And then from there, of course, you can experiment, but it's very hard when starting off to write every day a post for the next day, or to write the post the same day. And also what you're going to post about is going to depend on why you're doing it. So, I said that I don't really have any ulterior motives because I'm not directly selling anything, but if you're selling a course, or if you work for an agency, it's not going to be the same angles or topics and this and that. So don't just start, get yourself to the point where you can, of course, get started, but just start shouldn't mean just start posting. It means just start writing to then, start posting. So very dangerous to jump in without having any clue about what you're doing. And, just like anything, try to do it with a bit of common sense, give yourself a bit of space, give yourself a bit of room, a bit of leeway, and that's gonna be a lot better.
Again, amazingly, like a really raw advice, and this is exactly what you were kind of looking for on the show, because generally, if we would hear things like just start writing, I feel like we would have fallen into the trap of your controversy.
It's like, who's that guy who was like, just do it? Remember this video? It's like, no, like, okay, just start planning, start writing, but don't just jump in with a random post that you wrote in your text editor. Start building a system, create a free Notion account, create a little database, and start writing out some post ideas. And then, I mean, obviously I have a ton of other tips. Another one is separate your writing and your editing. For me, these are two very different, like, cerebral activities. One is writing, which is like brain dumping, which is you have information in your brain and you want to get it out onto like paper or computer. But while you're brain dumping, your goal is to get as much information outflowing as possible. Whereas when you're editing, so I say you write for yourself and you edit for others, in the sense that you write to empty your mind and you edit to make your emptied mind comprehensible by others. And to do those in different moments means that you can focus on getting stuff on paper, and then you can focus on making it understandable. Because if you're trying to do the two at the same time, they're like opposing brain forces. And so you stop brain dumping to edit, and then you go back to, and it's like multitasking. It's not possible. So that was also another big one. And if you can do it, if as a bonus, you can like write on computer and edit on your phone, it's beautiful. Because then you format for mobile, and reading sentences on a different device changes the way that your brain ingests information. And so it completely separates the two actions, and it's very optimal for just like formatting and stuff like that.
I was going to ask why that, but like it completely makes sense. And I feel like this last bit, this second advice, is something that even I need to take, because essentially we don't think of these being different activities, like brain dumping and editing. Essentially, content writers or marketers are just like dump an idea, start refining it immediately. Excuse me. And so that kind of like what you said, it's two different brain functions, and amazing. That's thank you so much for that, Maxim. Well, that's all we have for the session, and thank you so much for this extremely educating.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for having me on, and I hope it was useful to everyone.
100%. I'm pretty sure it is, because I've taken some pointers out of it. And like I said, the brutal truths and the harsh truths that we need to hear as beginners in content creation, and for the many community members that are going to like listen to this, it really means a lot. And for anyone who hasn't come across Maxim's profile, do give him a follow. The link is going to be in the description, and take advantage of some amazing resources he posts, which are also helpful but also really entertaining. And let's not forget the Growth Talks podcast. Like, I've been tuning in; they're really fun. I'm actually looking out for the next one, Maxim. But once again, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And that's all for this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.